They did it again. Another one. Put another one on the board. Make that wins at 8 of their last 9. That's their second 4-game win streak this season. Bears win 31-28 over the Pittsburgh Steelers without Aaron Rodgers. But they were down so many players defensively. Pretty much playing guys who were called up from the practice squads because they didn't have enough healthy guys. And they still won this thing. I mean, this is a new team. I mean, where were we last year? 1 year ago today, where were we? Just think about that for a second. They were staring down the barrel of a 4-7 record after losing to the Minnesota Vikings after coming back from 11 points down in the final minute of the game via an onside kick. They lost that game in overtime, but they were 4-7 and could not buy a win in a one-score game. And now all of a sudden, the Bears are now 6-1 in one-score games in 2025. I'm being serious when I say that last year's Bears team is probably 1-6 in the 7-1 score games that the Bears have played in this year, as opposed to 6-1, which they are this year. The coaching staff has done a phenomenal job because that defense out there was so battered and bruised throughout this game, and they were able to survive and win and get to 8-3. They found a way. Now, there are 3 types of sports fans, especially when it comes to rooting for your own team. And I think this Bears team is really showing all 3 of these types of fans. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with this. I'm just saying that there are different types. You have the fair weather fan, casual, who is pretty much just strictly focused on wins and losses. Their entire outlook on the team is, did you win or did you lose? What is your record? And I'm pretty sure that a lot of those people are happy just because they're 8-3. They don't care how it gets done. They're happy that the team's 8-3. And that's all that matters to them. And that's fine. Then you have people that are very optimistic and just continue to try and find positives any which way you want. You specifically find these types of fans on losing teams in losing seasons, aka last year for the Bears, who are those types of fans were trying to justify that, hey, it wasn't the worst season ever because guess what? We got to see some flashes from Caleb Williams, blah, 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 all that wonderful stuff, right? And I found myself in that camp more often than not last year, trying to take away positives from yet another one-score heartbreaking loss. And then you have the fans who are just never happy unless the team is contending for a Super Bowl or aren't happy that they're winning the way they want them to. There are plenty of people out there who are like, this is an unsustainable way to win for the Chicago Bears. They're 8-3, but they're 6-1 in one-score games. They've had to come back with a game-winning drive in the final 2 minutes 5 times this year. This is the first one-score game they've been in where they haven't had to come back and win, and they've held on to it. But you have those people out there who will, kind of almost put an asterisk behind certain records like this. They're like, you keep winning one-score games, you keep escaping. There's so many problems with this team still, and I'm not going to be happy with them until they, play clean all season long and find ways to win games by 3 scores week in, week out. And there's good things and bad things that come out from viewing sports that way. In all 3 of these types of ways. But I'm trying to lay it out there because we've seen these kind of stereotypes, if you will, come out with this Bears team. And I mainly bring this up because even in the Bears fandom, there are people out there that are like, they're winning too close. This isn't sustainable. They got in their own way, but they still, escaped with a win. This isn't a true win. You escaped with this one. This has an asterisk because it's a backup quarterback. Blah, 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 blah. And then you also have the people who are like, I'm just happy they won because they were down their top 3 linebackers and their top 2 corners, and they still overcame that. I'm just happy that they're 8-3. There are plenty of people who are overjoyed just from the fact the Bears won this game, and there are plenty of people who are frustrated that they only won this game by one score. And again, there are pros and cons to each way of consuming sports media, consuming the Chicago Bears specifically. There's different ways of digesting it, analyzing it. There's pros and cons to every way. Look, at the bottom line, this team has a lot to improve on. But on the other hand, if there's so much that this team needs to improve on, and they're still 8-3, just wait until this team figures it out, A, gets healthy, and B, has some better offensive efficiency, which is, I think, hilarious that we're even talking about we need better offensive efficiency because this team put up 31 points today. But at the same time, I completely understand it. This team probably could have scored 38, maybe even could have gotten to 40 if everything went correctly and incredible. And look, and what's even funnier is there's a little bit of validation for that because despite this team scoring 31 points, they very well could have scored 38 or 41 or, they could have scored a lot more points if there was some more efficiency. But 31 points is nothing to scoff at, and I don't think really anyone should be coming out of this game upset that the offense only scored 31 points. And look, I know that there are going to be some people talking about the fact that Caleb Williams only completed about 55% of his passes. 19 of 35 for 239 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Was sacked just once, but despite all that, his QBR over 100. And that's a pretty good game. That's his third 100-plus rating of the season. 3 touchdowns, no picks is nothing to scoff at, man. And look, there should be some standards when you have a number 1 overall quarterback like this. But at the same time, if we're going to still complain after 3 touchdowns, no picks, and the win, 31 points, because he didn't throw for 300 yards or his completion percentage wasn't at 65, okay, that's stuff to continue to work on. He's still very, very young. We are seeing the infancy of what looks to be like a very long career for Caleb Williams because despite all the hits that he consistently takes, he has significantly dropped the amount of hits he's been taking this season, but with all the hits that he has taken throughout his NFL career so far, he has not missed a game. He has not missed a game. So he's durable, and I trust him to be able to take a beating and stand in there and continue to get back up as he has so far in his young career. But agreed, he probably should have a better completion percentage, and if he does, the game probably isn't a 1-score game. Sure, that can be true. But also, this team won without their top 3 linebackers and their top 2 corners on defense, and their offense was able to carry the weight enough to get them the win. Look, this team is still growing. This is the first year for head coach Ben Johnson, and if so far this season has been any indication, the guys in that locker room want to play for him. The team is behind him, like the front office is behind Coach Johnson, and the team is winning right now. And if this marriage between GM, quarterback, and head coach continues to grow and blossom, this team's going to be good for a while. So, yeah, maybe them being in a ton of 1-score games isn't optimal, but it should get better. Of course, that becomes a fork in the road. Either this team continues to progress and excel and become a contender over the next 2-3 years, or you kind of have what happened with the 2018 Bears. And first-year head coach, they hit it out of the park. The 2018 Bears were also 8-3 after 12 weeks and 11 games. But the difference is that team completely fizzled out after 2018. They went to 8-8 in 2019 and 2020. So they weren't awful, but they were not very good and definitely didn't build upon the good season they had in 2018. And, of course, the regime was out 3 years after that season. So you hope that it doesn't turn into that. That's the biggest concern. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that this coach and this coaching staff has built a winning culture. And I think a big reason why I feel that way is it's not necessarily about Ben Johnson regressing as a coach or whatever. It's more keeping the staff around, because it's not just the head coach. There are so many other positions that go into a successful football team. And I look at a guy like Dennis Allen, where his scheme was able to do enough to get this team a win despite being, again, down their top 3 linebackers and their top 2 corners, and still come away with a win, is massive. And so, knowing that he's probably not going to be interviewed for a head coaching job, like Vic Fangio got a head coaching job right after the 2018 Bears. And so, they couldn't really, that defense wasn't the same after they lost Fangio. I think that this defense is only going to get better, because with what happened with Dennis Allen when he was a head coach with the Saints, I don't think he's going to be a top head coaching candidate anytime soon. So I think that there is some job security in that sense. And that's going to be very nice to have Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen continue to build this roster up and continue to develop these players. And when you have a guy like Dennis Allen stick around for a couple of years, the veterans now pick up the scheme, they know his coaching style, they know the system. It becomes easier and easier each and every year as you keep going to play for that coach, because you know the system, you've played with him for years. Everything just gets easier. And, of course, we're not even mentioning the big elephant in the room when it comes to the defense. The fact that they're incredibly injured this year, and they have been all year long, and it's been just a hamster wheel. It feels like they've been out Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, and TJ Edwards for the majority of the season. But outside of that, it feels like guys continue to get hurt and then get healthy and play, and then someone else is getting hurt. So the next man up mentality in this Bears locker room has to be very, very strong, because these guys are getting their chances and they're coming through. You talk about a guy with Nahshon Wright, who now has 5 INTs on the year, with another one today. And by the way, Nahshon Wright with a spectacular INT, one of the best I've ever seen from a player in a Bears uniform. He's only getting paid like $1.7 million this year. They got to find a way to keep him on the roster for next year, because he has been huge. And it's been so important with not only Johnson and Gordon out, but again, we tend to forget Terrell Smith, CB4, and basically the top backup option for this Bears team, went down in the preseason with an ACL tear. So he hasn't even played all year long. So you got to give a lot of credit to Nahshon Wright, who had just one career takeaway in his career coming into this season. He now has 7, 5 INTs and 2 fumble recoveries. Like, you got to give a lot of credit there. And then I want to really shine a light on the linebackers for the Bears today. Down TJ Edwards and Noah Sewell, we kind of knew that and kind of had a feeling that was going to be the case, especially with TJ. But I don't think very many people expected Tremaine Edmonds, who has been healthy all year and been the anchor for this defensive unit, is now placed on IR and will be out for 3 more games after this. This was his first game on the IR, so he'll be out for at least 3 more games. So they're down their top 3 linebackers. They're working with Ruben Hippolyte, DeMarco Jackson, and Amen Ogbongbemiga. And that was their linebacker trio for today. Guys who are backups and practice squad guys coming through in a big game against a team that is very good at the short game. They run the ball down your throat, and they are very much a dink and dunk type of team that utilize the tight ends quite a bit. And they did their job. Those 3 guys had a combined 5 tackles all season coming into this game. And then Amen Ogbongbemiga, who had no tackles coming into today on the year, had 14. DeMarco Jackson wearing the green dot, basically being the leader for this defensive unit, 15. Led the team with 15 tackles. Had a TFL in there. And, I mean, it was amazing. And then Ruben Hippolyte got 2 tackles before he ended up getting hurt. So that wasn't good as well because Hippolyte ended up getting hurt, so it was mainly Jackson and Agbambamiga in the linebacking core for the majority of the game. And then towards the end of the match, Amen Agbambamiga went down with an injury, and so Carl Jones has to come in and play linebacker. So they had 4 guys. So they're basically on linebacker 4, 5, 6, and 7 for this game. And they did their job. They did enough to get the win. And so despite all these injuries, oh, by the way, Tyreek Stevenson went down with an injury in this game, so Nick McLeod had to come in. So it's like another injury in the secondary. The top 3 corners were out by the end of this game. And there you go. They didn't allow really any big plays. I think the biggest play offensively was the 56-yard fake tush push on 4th and 1. But outside of that splash play, I don't think they had another play over 30 yards. They prevented the big play. The guys who stepped in did enough defensively to get the job done. And then Montez Sweat came through when he needed to step up. He got 2 sacks of Mason Rudolph, the only 2 for the team in this game, and forced a fumble on one of those, and got his own fumble recovery in the process there. So if you're going to look at the box score and think, I don't know, I think that's a bit suspect. They let up 28 points to a backup quarterback at home. Just remember that this team was out without their top 3 linebackers, their top 2 corners, their top 3 corners for half the game, and they still found a way to get it done. And really, they only let up 21 points because there was a defensive touchdown today for the Steelers as well. So Dennis Allen's got to be incredibly proud of his group. And they played great in the second half. They forced a couple of punts to start after the Steelers' offense was kind of really moving in that first half. They really stopped them in the second, especially in the third quarter, which is where they had that forced fumble. They let up the touchdown drive, the long touchdown drive in the fourth quarter, but they tightened up when they needed it most late in the fourth. So I got to give a lot of credit to this Bears defense, despite some struggles because they were injured, and still found a way to win. And then we get to the offensive side of the ball, which this was a breath of fresh air because this team has now won 4 games by kicking 4 field goals. At Las Vegas, at Washington, home against the Saints, and at Minnesota. So they have relied on their kickers, both Santos and Jake Moody, who was released after last week's win against the Vikings. He's now signed with the Commanders, ironically enough. But they have been winning a lot of games on the backs of their kickers. Here's the thing. They didn't need him today. They didn't need Santos today to win them a game. I mean, the field goal that they kicked at the end of the first half ended up being the winning, difference in the game, but they didn't really need to rely on Cairo Santos in this game. They had 3 red zone drives, and they scored touchdowns on all 3 of them. They took the ball away twice defensively. They scored touchdowns on the ensuing drive both times. So there's a lot to like offensively, despite maybe a low completion percentage for Caleb Williams. This offense was still pretty efficient. And here's the big difference. Last week they scored on 5 drives. 4 of them were field goals. This week they scored on 5 drives. 4 of them were touchdowns. The 12-point difference, guys. You go from under 20 points to over 30. 19 to 31. And I know that they could have put this team away when they had the chance, but the offense actually, weirdly enough, this is the first time the offense really kind of stalled a little bit in the fourth quarter. So the defense stepped up when the offense was struggling, which has been the opposite and plenty of times this year where the offense is coming through when the defense has struggled. So I like to see that this team's playing complementary football because even though they turned the ball over twice, they took it away twice. You can argue they should have put this team away earlier, and I probably agree. But this is a tough defense. They could not really run the football at all. So when it came down to the wire and they needed to run the football to ice the game, they could not. And so that left the door open for the Steelers. But on the contrary, the Steelers needed to start passing the ball to come back in this game, something that they really hadn't been doing well all day long. More specifically, they hadn't been passing the ball to the sidelines very well. They were going with some screen passes and some short slants and tight end out routes, jet sweeps. They were using the short game a lot. And when the Steelers had to stretch the field, they couldn't. And that's where the stalemate happened in the final 5 minutes. I think that as this team is with Ben Johnson longer, that game will not come down to a final possession, and the Bears will be able to finish it earlier. I really do think this, because I think that this locker room wants to play for Ben Johnson. They love that guy. I think that this locker room is also more talented, and it's only going to get more talented as the years progress, you'd think, right? But this defense is doing more with less. This offense carried their weight today by scoring points and having drives end in touchdowns. That was the big thing in this game. Because while they had a couple of drives that ended up being 3 and outs, they had a couple punts in this game. When they did score points, it was touchdowns. It wasn't field goals. And I think that's the big thing that I was wanting to see out of this offense today. And I got to give DJ Moore his flowers. That man has been grinding through this season. And I'm glad to see he was rewarded, because he had 5 catches for 64 yards and 2 touchdown catches. Had one coming into this game. Just one receiving touchdown. Has a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown this year, funnily enough, in the week since this last receiving touchdown. But he's able to get 2 here today. 2 big ones, too. And I'm just happy because he's been doing a lot of the dirty work. He's been really a Swiss Army knife on this offense. He has taken some carries as a running back. He's thrown a touchdown pass to Caleb Williams. He's doing a lot in this system, and he's being rewarded with a couple of touchdown catches, and I like that. Also, quick side note, got to give a shout out to Caleb Williams for giving a little bit of a nod to Aaron Rodgers, one of his childhood idols, who didn't play in this game, was on the sideline for Pittsburgh by capitalizing on a free play touchdown in which Aaron Rodgers, and Bears fans know this very well, Aaron Rodgers is the king of free play scores and free plays. So see Caleb Williams kind of take advantage of that with him in the building. It's kind of nice to see. I like that. It was DJ Moore's 2nd touchdown of the game, and that gave the Bears the lead early in the second half, a lead they would not give up. Colston Loveland also had a nice game, 4 catches for 49 yards and a score on a nice little slant route from Caleb Williams. His first touchdown at home in front of the Soldier Field faithful. And had another really nice catch on a 3rd down to keep the clock running after it got knocked out of his hands as he ran into a defender. He kept his eyes on the ball and regained control for a catch. It didn't go for a first down, but it kept the clock rolling when the team needed the clock to continue to move down in the 4th quarter. And it was just a nice catch overall to catch it off a bobble like that. So Colston had another nice game, but I think the one thing that we do need to have a conversation offensively is Rome Odunze. Look, over the last couple of weeks, I've seen some people talk about Rome Odunze in a negative light, and we're going to have a bit of a conversation here because he's had some problems with drops this season. And then there's also what happened today. 3 catches on 9 targets. He's still getting a heavy dosage of targets on this team. Has not converted to nearly as many catches as you would like on a weekly basis. He had a catch on the sideline taken away because he couldn't get the 2nd foot in bounds late in the first half. And in another pass he caught on the sideline, he actually caught, but it was knocked out of his hands by a defender as he kind of let his guard down, and he didn't complete the process of the catch. So it went as an incompletion. So there's 2 catches. Both would have gone for first downs for more than 10 yards, through the air. That has to be cleaned up from Rome Odunze. Ball security. And you got to make sure you're aware of where you are on the field to make sure you get both feet in bounds, complete the process of the catch, because those are 2 completions this team probably could have really had in this game. And look, all in all, this is a very big team win. Complimentary football. Both teams stepping up for each other. Look, this is a very complimentary football win. Both sides of the ball stepping up when the other side was struggling a little bit. Defense stepped up when the Bears fumbled the ball right after giving up a defensive touchdown and held the Steelers to no points. The offense came through when the defense would let up touchdowns. Like, it felt very complimentary. It felt like everyone in this locker room's playing for each other, and they're playing like a team. That's the big thing. They are playing like a complete team. Now, of course, there are shortcomings on both sides of the ball. Defense let up 21 points, but they got 2 takeaways. Offense scored 31 points, but they turned the ball over twice. So we've yet to see, that clean, perfect 60-minute effort like we did against Dallas week 3. But when you have both sides of the ball helping each other out when the other side maybe has a down moment, I think that says a lot about the chemistry in the locker room. And I really like that with this team, man. And look, there's going to be a lot of noise after this game. Because Aaron Rodgers didn't start, there are people who are going to downplay this win, saying they beat a backup quarterback. And some people are probably still going to downplay the fact that they beat a team with a winning record in this game. Or, well, a team that currently has a winning record, because this team already beat Washington, who was 3-2 going into their match. I know that they've fallen off the face of the earth since that game and haven't won since, but that they still had a winning record going into that game. That's the thing. They still had a winning record going into that game. Anyways, they get the win. There are going to be people talking about the Bears, talking about how they're frauds or whatever. At the end of the day, this team continues to stay on top of the NFC North. They are 8-3 for the first time since 2018. And they're 1 win away from clinching their first winning season since 2018. It's tied for their most wins in a season since 2019. Because they had 2 8-8 seasons there. Like, there are so many trends for this football team that are being broken by the 2025 version of it. And I think that us as Bears fans, while we expect some more, and there are lots of things to be improved on to clean up, yada, 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 I think at some point, being 8-3, there's a little to complain about. Because what do the 2025 Bears do that not a lot of Bears teams have done in the past? Find ways to win. At some point, you, A, never apologize for winning a football game in the NFL. B, you don't apologize for winning by 1 score. Those are the games that you want to win. Those are the games that really tank your season or make your season. I mean, we've seen a couple of teams in the last couple of years do great in 1-score games. And it boosts them to probably an overinflated record, yes, but they find ways to win. And that, to me, is what this Bears team is doing. Are they maybe a little bit ahead of schedule and probably playing a little bit over their head right now and where their actual skill level's at? Maybe. But I'm not going to complain about being 8-3 at all. Look, up next, the Philadelphia Eagles on the road on Black Friday. It's a bit of a short week. It's not as short as Sunday to Thursday, but it's still a short week. And I think that's probably why they sat Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon despite being activated from the IR this week. Because I think they want those 2 guys to suit up and be healthy to go up against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I think that's a good idea because that is going to be their biggest test of the year so far. On the road in a hostile environment. No other NFL games going on at the time, though there will be college football going on, and I know that it's going to draw away a little bit of viewership, but you're still going to have all eyes in the NFL world on you on Friday. If they find a way to beat the Philadelphia Eagles on the road, I don't care how it happens. It could be a 6-3 slugfest that stinks. You beat the Philadelphia Eagles, you have cemented yourself as a team that warrants notice. You put yourself squarely, not only in the playoff conversation, but in the NFC conversation. So have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. I'll see you guys on Black Friday. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button if you really enjoyed it and want to see more content from me. Keep the conversation going down in the comments section below. Let me know what you think about a second 4-game winning streak this season for the Bears, who are now winners of 8 of their last 9. They're 8-3 and top of the NFC North. Let me know how you feel. And I'll see you guys in the next one.